Okay, moving on to, so now both the exercises we'll do it together. And I think I'm taking a few minutes to talk about certain questions about archiving projects and roles of an archive, right? So I'm going to share my screen. You should be able to see a tab. Most of these projects you all might know about. I think it's only because now we're talking in this context, it might mean something differently. So this is a very good example between an archive and a researcher's or a curator's archive, right? So this is the archives at NCBS. NCBS, for those who don't know, National Center for Biological Sciences, a very prime institution next door for me in Bangalore, in North Bangalore. They do transformative research, literally groundwork for a lot of biological studies. And now they are also growing, so there is more organizations which are getting added or sub-organizations which are getting added, stem cell research and CCAMP and so on and so forth. Why this is important is only to understand that 25 years, no, now they would be 30 years old. And when they were turning 25 is when they started already thinking about that they need to have an archive, they need to look at their own history, institutional history, and so on and so forth. And the archivist, Venkat, whom I also mentioned yesterday, when he stepped in, he said, why should it only be institutional? It could be an archives of many things. So he wanted to keep the scope expanded. But this is not the first thing that they did, right? So I'm going to change the tab. This is what they created first. So once they started looking at different archival materials that were already there, the space that they had, which was an ex-director's, former director's cabin, so all that they were finding there, and they knew that this is a much longer project, lot to do basically. And in the meanwhile, how to celebrate the 25 years. Also, a lot of material about them was in other archives. It's very important to note. So instead of going around right now figuring out how to get it and doing the paperwork, they dealt with it very differently. This became a virtual exhibit of the archiving project, which happened first. They came up with certain thematic areas which they wanted to talk about. And of course, these thematic areas directly relate to the materials, or it banks on the materials that they found. So then under the thematic area, you find that there's a certain introduction to the narrative that they want to tell. You read that. Then you go into these subsections or sub-narratives, and these sub-narratives introduce you to archival material. So you look at certain photographs. As you can rightly see, the photograph is from TIFR Archives, which is Tata Institute for Fundamental Research, which was the parent body for NCBS. So they haven't really, till I understand, they have not moved things around between the two. They just know of each other's repositories, and if a researcher is looking for, so when I was working with the exhibition, I needed to access something. I was put in touch with TIFR as a known researcher or a known person who was at NCBS, and I could access certain materials and use it in the exhibition. So that sharing at institutional level is as important as or more important than individual levels. And you read the narrative, it's more like an exhibit, you're experiencing, you're looking at very disparate things that have been put together and somebody's trying to weave it. And you also can listen to recordings.
We struggled quite a bit, and fortunately, Abid himself was very supportive, and there was this institute-wide.
They have been doing oral histories, as well as they have been collecting smaller interviews depending on where the interest fits of the conversation. So you go reading it, and what it does is it also takes you to the related items in the main archive. Not everything, but you get to see, under understanding that subject which you were reading, what other material could connect you to the story. So while over here they've used only 3 or 4 of them, and then of course other conversations.
Broadly choosing the areas in which people were being appointed. So in that way, I think
they've also pulled out materials from, as again you can see, Abid Siddiqui was no more when they were setting this up. So his conversation from TIFR in some other context has been roped in, right? So while you're working with archives and your interest is archival investigation, like a researcher would approach it, but with a logic that ultimately it would lead to also building of an archive. So this kind of knowing where your other material is lying and so on and so forth would have led them to the main archive. I'll go back to that site. I'll just show you a few other things on this. You can go through this. It's a very exciting site. I'll share these links if you haven't seen. But they also played with, so this has a lot of embedded visual tools into it, right? So this is what I wanted to show. There's a space tour of the place. This keeps getting updated. So when they first put the space tour, the archive was not there. So you got to see Mr. Abid Siddiqui's lab as it is, and now you get to see it the way it is with the archive and so on and so forth. And you can also go and see the Peopleplex. The Peopleplex is actually different. So you get to see the oral history project here. And Peopleplex, yeah. This is very interesting. For example, Shwetal, the kind of connections that you want to make between the stories. So you're listening to somebody here. Let's say you're listening to K.S. Madhumala, and then you want to see where the material connects or who it connects to. So I know that this is done completely through digital tools. So you're using keywords to see how it will get mapped down.
She was very particular about the map.
But I'm also very clear in terms of the way we have used digital tools that you can always moderate that also. It's not completely based on an algorithm. You can tell it to tweak things and then publish it so that you're not completely at the mercy of a tool. So this is now what a curatorial effort looks like, right? Or curated effort looks like. So coming back to the main archive, and now that it is ready, what it would look like is, of course, the main page needs to tell you who you are and which are the key collections and so on and so forth. But eventually, you are showing people the different projects and collections which they can access. So somewhere categorical, or at least call them sub-projects or subcategories that you are introducing, right? You're sort of making material available as it is for people to work with. So while there were oral histories which were weaved in the other setup through a narrative, here are the oral history interviews. You can listen to them completely open-minded. If I am now stepping in as a researcher or a curator who was going to do the exhibition, I didn't need to look at the exhibit project and be informed or influenced by it. And of course, yeah, it can also have artifacts. It will have documents, photographs, as we all know. I think we should go into one because it's exciting. Each archive now does its own way of metadata and description, metadata mapping and description. So here you can see the basic information, largely all the copyright and access issues. In case there is any limitation to access, you can mention it. So you decide how your, the backend is a computer management system where all of this usually gets uploaded, and the front end can get designed with your web developer, how you want to present it, right? And then the sub collection is all listed here. So I can go through this, understand, okay, if I'm interested in the wasp venom experiment, I can click on it. Something should happen. Sorry, my internet is a little slow. And once I come here, I know from the description, okay, this is what I might want to look at. There are papers in this. So there are details here. What they have, they don't have everything. So they've written part of the archives at NCBS, right? So they don't have everything of it, but whatever is there, you want to access it. And you can mention the sub-series. There should be a number here, which is not there for some reason. Anyways, but you can mention that you want to look at wasp venom sub-series. Oh, okay, sorry. So when you go to the smallest of item is when you will find your identification number. So they have only one part of it, which is the estimation of minimum inhibitory concentration. None of us know what this is, but yes. So then you can use this identifier and write to the archive that you want to research with this. I got something in the chat.
Ishita, yeah, it was me. Is it accessible to people like us to just see how the structure works? Not that I would want to go deeper because I realize I need access. But
structure as in what structure?
So what you showed, no, that that circular thing and that person talking and all that. So if I want to take a longer look at it, is it accessible to me?
Oh yes, yes. So both these websites, right now I'm showing you projects which are live up there. I'm not showing you projects which are no.
Yeah, but I don't know. You might be having some permission, so I just wanted to check that whether it's open to all.
No, I am also careful of that. So at this stage, I didn't want to get into. So let's say certain projects where I want to show you the record sheets or I want to show you the legal papers and all, I will definitely not be able to share those. You're right. But right now, I'm only taking us through archives which are all accessible.
Okay.
So anyways, I was just talking about in that moment, I was talking about look for the identifier. And then as a researcher, some of you might have used archives like that. So do you want to get into this phase? This is the more important question for you to answer or think about in the coming weeks before we meet again. That do you want to only present a story? Because if you saw in the exhibit form, there was no identifier. It just said that this photograph is available at this archive. It was a way of sourcing it and citing it. You're not getting into where I also feel that even as an exhibit or a publication, you can put the identifiers, but that's now everybody's different way of looking at different projects. But first of all, the key question for each one of us over here today is, do we want to make more open, researchable archives which somebody can dig through? Or is it something that is already formulated through your interpretation and now it is being exposed to the audience, right? And still at the back of it, certain parts of the archives or the original information is available for people to ponder about or meddle with. So that's a very key question. Now coming to some more interesting projects. Unfortunately, what's happening with digital archive projects is they're going off. So there are two very interesting projects I wanted to show you. Both of them are inaccessible, maybe because everybody doing it out of their own pockets. I think you can't sustain the website costs. I don't know. So right now I'm going to show you a video of this project. Let's see if it plays first of all. Okay. So you will be able to see Vimeo video. Please let me know if you're not able to or you're not able to hear.
Welcome everyone to the second day of the symposium.
Okay, let me just quickly go to the interesting part. If they are presenting it is.
A new energy. The exhibition is such that different people will encounter different things. No two people will be able to experience the exhibition in the same way. And in many ways, this form contributes to the complexities of the situation when narratives and counter-narratives shape the experience of the pandemic. Further, I would like to thank our collaborators.
Did somebody say something?
Yeah, it is echoing. I don't know if it's echoing for others, but we can't hear because it's echoing.
Yeah, it's echoing. Ishita, if you mute your mic, maybe.
Collaborators and partners and supporters, Madhushri Datta, Clara Knapp, Adrian Ramabaya from the Academy of Arts of the World from Cologne. Madhushri is currently the director of the institute, and has a multidisciplinary.
While the rest stays absolutely disoriented or maybe numb. When once the gaze of another body meant something, now I don't know if someone's really looking at me or not when in a group. My father started online photography lectures. The subjects were also modulated to what can be done from a house and what the minimum available equipment. The house was appropriated according to what how we worked the space out. All unnecessary items went inside cabinets itself, and we've tried to draw out some larger boards and constellations of these stories. And the algorithm is as such that the visitor can navigate in multiple ways and no two experiences would be same. So there are multiple of these narrative spheres on the screen. You can zoom in, out, pan, left, right, yeah, top, center, depending on. And once you click on the sphere, it takes you to one of the points which you can browse through. I'll stop.
I just wanted to give you guys a glimpse of this, and I'm going to share the video link, so do visit it. I don't know if the project is taken down because I couldn't really find the active link. What this is a project, and of course they're now calling it an exhibit, as I heard it myself. In my understanding, again, it's been built from a perspective of archive building, and that is how I've seen Rupali and others present in other places as well. It was created during, this, of course, after the second wave, not immediately, but they were actively doing this during the COVID times to see how people have spoken about COVID and what are the words that they associate with it and what kind of stories or memories or memorabilia and artifacts sort of they associate with. So it's a very small attempt at archiving COVID in a way, which happened just a year ago. This, again, to my understanding, is more of an exhibit, right? Because you're already picking and moderating while you are allowing somebody to engage with the larger flex that you saw in terms of click on a balloon and you'll see and you'll read some story and that story will lead you to the next story. But you're already setting that framework into place while you might have approached it. So what I understand is that partly it was done by the researchers where they asked people and they engaged, and partly it was crowdsourced, if I remember correctly. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but so people have given information free willingly, knowing that something is going to happen to their experiences or information about their tryst with COVID and the pandemic. And now the way it's getting presented, is there that shift that you also want to create as a curator in the way you present your projects? Now we're going to go to a very straightforward archive. This is continuing from yesterday's conversation. So this is SEPT archives. Digitally, more or less works the same way physically. You can see overview of all the collections the way we saw it in NCBS archive, or you can search. And what we had worked over here very thoroughly was making the search engine as suggestive as possible so that people who don't know what to do here can also try and explore. I'm just keeping this on for people to see how the access guidelines and things can be. The larger document is longer, but at least you can pick the key important things, put it here, make somebody accept, and then let them go further. So now this is what a depository would look like. These images are automatically fetched by the algorithm. These keep shifting. But if I know that I am looking at, yes, I'm looking at Bagmati zone, for example, then I just click on that. So the server will filter it for me and only show me the work that is done in Nepal, Bagmati Square. And let's say I'm interested in this drawing, which we can't see. So I get to see a small snippet of it, details of it. So now I know that this was done as a student study. Okay, not interested, close it. No, maybe I'm still interested. So go ahead and look at more information about it. This is one of the ways you can always protect your information, put logos or use disclaimers or use low resolution images, of course. So this is not a very high resolution image so that people cannot mess with your data, but you can still make it available digitally. Metadata description, very critical. You decide, again, if you have too many categories, which we had in our record sheets, what stays on the top and what goes to the back. Just 1 second. Computer is hanging. So rights were very important. They have been laid out. Let's say some architect had said that you cannot access the material through the archives, only allowed to share it through this platform. Then putting that here in the rights is useful. So the researcher or the user is not going to write to the archives, or they'll write to the archives to know about the contact details of the architect and their family. And then things which are less important to a commoner, which are more architectural, which are more artistic, they've gone to the back, right? Now, we have also learned from different archives. So Victor and Albert Museum Archives does this at the bottom of the archives. They put everything together as a list, so which is a scroll. And while we were working with developers in 2013, we're in a new time and age, the developers' suggestion was that let's not make it too long a website to scroll until they really go into some reading material so that your user gets doing things more quickly. So these are these are marketing or sales logic, which every developer will have a new take on. And then the interest was also to keep them engaged, right? So things which are related. For some reason, this row should have not been this big, but I do know that they are reworking on the website. It was supposed to be a very small scroll bar where you can see related images. So anything related to Patan Darbar Square, what are the other 15 images or drawings that I can look at? If I'm interested in gateway works, then what are the other gateway works that I can look at? So the scroll bar was more like a temptation for me to look at other archival material. So you can see even the narrative building does that. From one story, it wants to take you to another story, or it will take you to the archive. So constantly, everybody's interest in an archival space is more or less to keep your readers engaged, but still give them what they're looking for as easily as possible, right? So from here, now if you see this weekend cottage would be Hema Sankalya's collection. So I will be literally jumping from a student research project, which is the Patan Darbar Square project, to a women architects archive. So even though outside I might have not engaged in the repository much, your tools of database access is allowing you or allowing your user to actually make connections and, of course, formulate their own research inquiry. Whichever image that they're interested in, they can again send this identifier to the archive, request that I want a high resolution image. Each of these websites, I'm not getting into, I'll send you these links. They all have their FAQs, they all have their policies printed on, published on the website. Apart from that, except terms that we did. Just the difference is NCBS is not putting any material out there. So they are not asking you to accept any rights or accept any terms while accessing the website. Whereas in this case, it was important to do so because you are making these, because they're savable images. And I think these were vision statements that were arrived at, where you said, yes, let somebody save it. What's the harm? It's a young student trying to do it for research. That is why you have made an archive, right? So why, even for a low-res image for a thesis, why should they have to email us? So it also reduces the work for them, but also for us. Because every researcher, if they're going to email you for permission requests and so on and so forth, it's too much to attend to after a point of time as your collections grow. You have enough work inside the archive building process that you are engaged with. And trust me, this is not only because it's an institutional archive. I'm experiencing it even with the women architects or a self-initiated project, that if you keep the material easily accessible out there, or you say, otherwise constantly the women architects themselves, right now the outside world doesn't know about this project, the women architects themselves keep asking for the same material again and again and again because they forget that they've already got one copy. And yeah, you can't get frustrated with them very, very soon, at least you can't. So how do you deal with those situations? I want to open one more because the oral history project in Sept Archives is not functioning the way it was imagined, because I think, as I said, they're still updating and the new team has only taken on during COVID. In the meanwhile, if anybody has any thoughts or questions, you can at least put them out there. I might not answer, but it's good to know what you all are thinking when you're seeing this.
Information out there was the constellations, for instance. I think Shwetal and others must have, as Shwetal pointed out, it was very interesting. How much of tech support can we expect if we are not really good out there? I suppose that comes in the latter part. But
yeah, it will come in the latter part, and of course there'll be more experienced people to talk about it. But from my experience, I am learning that some of the digital visualization tools are free or free to some extent. It's just that then you're investing more time from your end, or your RA is exploring. So with the Women Architects project, when we wanted to visualize the oral histories and we were using the raw graphics application, which is open, Fiona had to sit and try out a lot of permutation combinations because she was really keen on seeing if we can find more visual ways to talk about these oral histories. Let's say somebody's not interested in reading and listening, as Shwetal pointed out, maybe not all good Jews are. So then so when we did that, we could use a free application, but then we had to spend in more time. Whereas, of course, somebody who knows these applications will be able to even tell you that this one will work correctly for you. And then how much of paid subscription can you afford? So that's something that one would have to figure out, that, okay, if you want to sustain this project for 3 years or 5 years, and this is becoming one of my personally the biggest question, that any fund or grant, except you get somebody like, let's say, Azim Premji University funded project, and throughout rest of the life, they're going to keep recharging the domain. In a way, with the Women Architects project, I know 3 years of it, I could get it from this grant which I'd got. Rest of it is going to be on me, or for me to keep finding funds. So does it become a sort of a stress? Does it become sort of a holdback in terms of the material getting lost? These are very important questions to ask. So are you creating any other alternative space where this material stays if the website goes off? Or is it this one-time effort and then it's a loss? So I don't have an answer. I'm as much curious as everyone else here would be. And hence this question about why are you going digital, and how much should you go digital, and how much should you make it a physical repository, and so on and so forth. Yes, Shweta.
So, I mean, if I just look at this website of NCBS, how much would it cost to kind of host a website like that? Because I have a website for my film, and I think we're paying something like 5,000 to 6,000 a year. I'm not sure. So, but how would this? Because this
the
one
domain cost is not too much, which I mean, not too much. I'm seeing it completely out of a very convenient space when I say, okay, for a domain now can be bought for 1,000 rupees. They're all fighting with each other, 1,000 rupees per year and so on. Hosting cost, depending on your data and your requirement in terms of the server, is what becomes questionable. Because if you need only few terabytes, so okay, I'll tell you, I'll keep giving example of the Women Architects project because it's really very live and real. So what we have done is we checked some 5-7 options of uploading the audios. We went with AudioMac, which allows me to upload enough audios free of cost. So we tried SoundCloud, we tried something else, we tried Anchor, or somebody was making it available on their own domain. So for example, Anchor was free, but then Anchor was creating a channel automatically. It was not allowing us to close visibility. And we were very clear that the visibility of this project has to be through the website that we are creating at this point. So it was not about restricting access, but we didn't want people accessing it from 5 places and getting lost as well, what this project is. So with that search, we came up with AudioMac. So which means my material is hosted somewhere else. It's on AudioMac server. And so on Bluehost, where we bought the domain, we didn't need to buy extra server space. So on the Bluehost now, it's a plan which is very minimal, some 10 GB or something of server space, and only the website is hosted there. Now tomorrow, if we say that no, all the data, which is what Sept Archives is doing, that they have put everything on AWS, Amazon server, then you are purchasing at least 100 GB already, and so on and so forth. So there your cost amplifies. This is one space where your costs amplify in terms of digital archiving. The second is your website designer might be a very kind person and so sees that, okay, there's not too much of design scope and so on and so forth. So their fee you can still negotiate. But when it comes to achieving the smallest of modifications, they are going to need to rely on a lot of plugins. Those plugins are again sold by a certain online vendor. So now that purchase of a plugin which we wanted for a certain visualization to work was costing us some $65 for a year or 6 months, something like that. And the moment, I don't think $65 was my first question. The moment it said it will only work for a year, at least in our heads as a team with the RAs, we were very clear, we don't want to design anything which is time restricted. So 1 saal ke baad yaad rakho that, okay, how to generate that $65 again? What if that $65 has become $150? I don't know. So not to make a project even digitally, which is the way we are all talking in the physical space, right? So when we go to communities, we don't want to make it Ishita or Shishti dependent. Why should on digital domain it remain like that? So I am in that project also, I'm still thinking that once I've finished what I need to finish, I should go and deposit the materials with another level of consent into a physical archive. so that at least there is a second copy somewhere. Apart from, of course, the first copy, original copy, zero copy being with the architects themselves. But I don't know, again, their families would want to keep it, who will safeguard it. So go back into consent documentation with them to tell them that, listen, it was enjoyable to do this digitally, but I know it has its own life. I don't know if I am there tomorrow or not, and if I'll have the money to sustain it 3 years later. So let's keep one copy of all this effort into a physical archive. And hopefully, if we can do it with Sept Archives or find an institution or another library who wants to keep it. And then publish that on the website also. That, okay, if you are now looking at sitting and listening to this for hours and hours, or you want to read the transcripts, we have done an MOU with certain institutions and the material is available at these libraries also. So opening up channels is very critical with all these projects, so that it's exciting when we see it visually, but it doesn't remain limited to us. Okay, so the last project, and I'll come to Aparna your questions, just trying to keep to time first, and the continuity. So this is very exciting. I think this has been in my inspiration for oral history projects. Again, most of you might have seen it, but British Library has a different platform for their sound archive. I don't understand why, because again, it would need that kind of plugins and setup, and again, a structure also. So you can go into each of these. I think what I am going to pick is oral history, and then again, it has been sub-categorized. You go into architecture and you see different. It's alphabetical basically, and you can then pick on whoever you want to listen to. Long hours of recordings, not very convenient to listen to. So you usually make them, cut them into parts. 30 to 35 is good enough, and then I can play that. And with that, they've put a description. They've put rest of the information here. So I know what I'm listening to, or why I'm interested in this conversation.
So, well, I think we've got to the fact that when I left school at 17, there was no point in going. Oxford didn't have a school of architecture; it had a technical college, and in those days,
yeah, these are all very low volume conversations. So while they have not written it here, we are writing on our website that it helps to listen to certain kind of recordings using headphones and earphones. Again, these are new kinds of learnings, because I saw it in some other art project that putting these kind of disclaimers or instructions along with it is helpful. And then, as you can see, they have also put this very small tab of how to use oral histories, because they're making it all available. While British Library's other documents are not accessible digitally. It's a very similar website to NCBS website, where you just get to see what the material is. Even to access the low resolution image, you have to go to British Library, or you have to go to RIB or Victor and Albert Museum, depending on where they have exchanged the materials. But for oral histories, people are avoiding that. To sit and listen in the space might be too long hours. So if you're making it accessible, then you just let the person know what they should be careful about. So if they misuse it, you can say it's published on the website and you can call them out. That's the simplest way to put it. And the last thing which I'm going to show you, and I'm going to let you explore it later, is because I know all the projects I showed you are mostly institutional. So even the COVID glossary was an institutional collaboration between School of Environment and Architecture and some German collaborators. But this is a very good example. There are a few more other links which I can share with you where personal archiving is also happening. So this is South Asian American Digital Archive. It's again an organization in US who is supporting in South Asians in America to archive their histories from different perspectives. And they have a very beautiful list of projects. I mean, so you can go into this, but also I think you can go into projects and pick up some of them. So you can source, I mean, you can scout through these projects. They are very exciting. And this shows that individually, how you can think of community level projects or city level projects also. As much as it seems like it's institutional, institutions are required, it's not necessary. I think from while we were doing, apart from the projects, I mean, while we have been doing these workshops, we have been noticing that most of us are worried about, do I have the wherewithal? And really, with so many tools and things available outside, and if you can look for smaller grants or smaller fundings also, or just go around crowdsourcing and say, listen, help me put this together, it's possible in terms of funding, not just crowdsourcing information. So this is a very interesting project where the archivist, I forget their name, has gone around asking people about their first days of moving into America from South Asian countries. Yeah, so they have mapped it against, again, these are all digital tools that they have used, mapped it against time for somebody to look at. You have also the other 2-3 ways of browsing, unlike the typical archive which I showed you. And let's see the random one and maybe just go to a story. And then they have written down a summary of that story, as well as you can listen to it in some cases. So where you can't listen to, in my understanding, that the family or the person has not allowed for the audio to be out there. In some cases, the audio is accessible. And then, of course, you can mention the different partners. You can keep a donate option as well, and you can mention your team and other aspects. This is also a project. Why I brought it up is because people can do it. They can add their own stories. And somebody at the back in the team will moderate it. And it's directly available. So you can put an audio, you can put a video, you can put text. You want to transcribe it, or I'm doing it for somebody else for my own research, but I also want it to be saved somewhere. So I'm doing it as a researcher. But you will have to make sure that if I'm correct, the copyright is all clarified. Yeah. This, I'm already giving a short and clear consent that it's all understood, and only then it's going up there. Okay, so the projects I wanted to show are covered. And I think the bigger question, which I want you all to keep in mind is, while I'm asking whether you want to curate or you want to be an archivist in the truest of sense, I think what is the role of an archive is to fuel more research, in my understanding. And this is something I stick by. So any project, the outcome of it needs to allow for more research and more interpretation, rather than become. So this is where the difference between an outcome and an output becomes, because Anchal's book is an output. We don't get to see the original material that she's dealt with, which would have been very exciting for a next kind of a research to flag off, right? And that's an outcome that most of us should think about, so that all these efforts don't get duplicated. The only reason is, first of all, this. Today, Debankita wants to think about theaters. 5 years down the line, another person wants to think about theaters and its history. Why should they reinvent the wheel? Why can't Debankita's research become accessible for more research? And still, she might go and make a performance out of it. But in that process, can one of your outcomes be a searchable, accessible place or a repository or a project? And even when we think of physical spaces, it's possible to make it happen. So you can think of either partnering with institutions or setting up a server, or already servers or local community servers are there. And you can go and make one project, closed project. Nobody should have raw files, definitely. But you can make it accessible in that library. So we need to find more and more ways so that locally all these materials and these projects are accessible. Quickly, 3 minutes, I'm going to answer Aparna's question. The terms and conditions were very useful. Also, for the use us to post photos and stamps or even pictures, should we need to have proof of ownership? Again, so this is a larger copyright issue conversation, because the Copyright Act has certain clauses. A, when it's passed on from family to family, there are certain acceptances. B, if I had got it from another architect or an artist because they safeguarded it with me, for instance, there's a 30-year rule or something like that. If I've had it for 30 years. And then the third clause also is about the person not being there. So if they are not there and nobody has claimed it in these many years, I think it's 10 years after death or something like that, then again, you have the rights for it. This is the legality. The way we dealt with it in Patni Archives was very different, where I felt, at least as a consultant to them, let's do it more ethically. Why should we assume? Let's just let the family know, because the family is involved, family has been engaged. So the family who needed to know, which all members, including a little bit of an expanded family tree, they all were informed that we are going ahead with these papers. They have been lying with so-and-so uncle and were passed on from so-and-so uncle. We are assuming that you are all into this, that we should create something more public with it. There was a certain discussion about it, whether, the owner of the material would have liked it or not liked it. And they discussed it out. It was a live Google Meet conversation where we said, what are the pros and cons of it? How do we make sure certain people talk about it, don't talk about it? I cleared their grievances to say, you cannot control it. They will say certain things about your family. This is what public information means. Let's come to consensus that we want people to research and get to know their regional history. So you do it the most ethical way. Everybody agreed. There was no need to, but we still did a paperwork with all of them so that nobody next heir or kin comes and questions the decision of their parent or of their parents or grandparents. So that's the ethical bit of it. If there are more family members involved, cross-check it. If there is nobody involved and only you are safeguarding it, then please go ahead and put a MOU into place or a memo into place with the lawyer that I have been given this material these many years, and this is what it means and what the project's intent will be.
Okay. Also, like for things that are handed down the family, like normally there's no legal document for those things. It's not like real estate or something. So, like somebody might give you some old coins or some old stamps. Like my father's given me some from his boyhood collection. So is it important, or do you think it would be wise, like a cautionary step, to get him to mention so in a document? Because if I put it out there, I could be questioned by anyone, or even like, say, the archaeological department. Like, how did you get these antiques, for instance?
So they will ask you any which ways. If something is, this is the worst thing about the policy, and I think Shrijan, right? So Shrijan would have talked about this very interestingly. So national heritage policy is quite crazy. And that's the only way to put it. Because if they identify something as importance of national heritage, they can just come and claim it. That's how it is. And it's out there online. You can look it up, and certain properties have been fighting this because they're all living in it. I mean, it's that crazy and lethal. So yes, they will any which ways come and ask you. And hence, to safeguard your own situation, it might always be nice if the parent is there, do a document. Why get into a situation any which ways? Yes, if the people are not around with whom you should be doing the document, then of course discuss it with the lawyer as to what is the best way of safeguarding it. But definitely a documentation of any kind will save you from the crazy laws that exist in the country. And people, please do not quote me on all of these things. But yeah, the crazy laws, it's very scary. But yeah, paperwork will help. Paperwork definitely helps. So if the parent is around, please ask them to put it for you, list it down, what all was handed down, and what kind of access or what kind of uses are they okay with, and so on and so forth. They can say all uses is possible. You can go and set it up tomorrow. So it's not just the government, but also, again, as I said, next of kin or anybody else who might be invested into that part of the handing down cannot come and question you.
And this doesn't have to be necessarily notarized or anything. It can just be on paper, right?
No, this will be a notarized document. When I'm saying legal documents, I think your access policies or those kind of documents need not go through notarization, but any kinds of contributions, any kind of handovers, any kind of permission to act, these will need to be not notarized. Because you're working with a material which ultimately could have larger interests.
Correct. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think it also covers the use of photographs. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? I know I was counting time, but anybody else has any questions, please put them in the chat. While you all are doing the exercise, I can definitely address them. Nijum, I also wanted to show one more example where I could have shown you the artist's archive. But as I said, some things are very strangely going down from the internet, or maybe the links have changed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share these resources and these links to certain questions by tomorrow over email with everyone. So hopefully it will give you a sense. But In the meanwhile, one which you could definitely look at is Asia Art Archive, which I know I'd showed you before also when we were working with Brito, where they have, interestingly, I don't know if they've gone into personal history much of different artists, but otherwise in terms of their artworks and other things they have. The second person you should definitely follow on Instagram, he still hasn't put the whole archive out there, but you can also talk to him. You can access the conversation I have had with him, that is Roshan Mishra in Nepal. And his father, Mr. Mishra, I forget his first name, was a very important, renowned artist of the modern, the post-independence contemporary times in Nepal. And Roshan is sitting with his entire archive and still doesn't know what to do with it while he's building other archives. So he's a very good person to engage with in terms of conversations. I have him on board to come and join us for one of the sessions. I will let you know if that gets finalized. Then you'll be able to have a more direct conversation with him. But do follow him on other platforms because he's posting about certain things that he's doing with his father's archive, who's an artist. And if I find the links which I'm referring to, I will share those with you as well. Anybody else? I think one important thing which I'm realizing while these projects are going down. So one observation is, yes, how digital is tricky. And you might see some projects going down. So thinking about the digital sustenance, which I wanted to bring out. And second is this difficulty of being able to find enough archives on personal histories. I think I'm seeing this as a merit as to why we are doing this program. And I'm saying this with a little more confidence because even Smithsonian's or even the British libraries or even the Canada Center in Montreal, all of those whom one would look up to, for some reason, they've all left out the personal histories. They've all left out the public history. And hence, perhaps in the last few years, whether it's from the public history point of view or personal archiving point of view, this has been a much needed space to venture into. People have been doing projects. It's not that we don't know them, but it's just that we can't find all of them in terms of wanting to access until we are able to bring them to talk to us. So even such talks which I might find, which might be relevant to your projects, I'll share them with you. But don't be disheartened when you don't see them online. It's just that, yes, to take a personal archiving project and find examples of it online is where the question about digital sustenance and funding and sources is coming into play a lot. Having said that, let's move to our exercise so that we can do that in about 20 minutes. And okay, so for this exercise, everybody needs to join the Excel sheet. So we're going to do one exercise, which is a quick one, and one exercise where you will ponder a little. But one exercise is really quick. So I need everybody on the Excel sheet back again and to the last page, which is page number 12. So we are at exercise 2, and I hope everybody is here. Okay, so hold on to your rows, right? There are 2 primary questions which I have for you. So you will do one question in a minute, right? You'll have to do this like a 8-minute show. It's really to capture our intuitive responses. So don't overthink it. Don't worry. There's no right and wrong. Okay. But the specificity is very important, right? So are we all game? I'm just going to say the question right at the turn of 12:38. Okay. Identify 3 users of your project. Specifically, as specific as you can be. 3 users of your project. So U1, U2, U3, you're putting down 3 users of your projects. In a minute, so quickly. First 3 intuitive responses. Don't worry about formatting. Don't worry about you have more than 3, you can write more as well. 3 is minimum. 3 users of your archive. The first 3 that come to your mind. as specific as you can be.
3 users. You mean people who would benefit from the archive or use the archive?
You think, what is your
Okay.
definition of users?
Okay.
I should have said consumers anyways. Consumers of your archive. This user word is very, icky. Okay, I'm going to move to the next question. The ones who want to fill in the previous one may continue to do so, but this is very different, okay? So think about it very differently. The 3 collaborators that you need on your project. Who are the 3, which are the 3 collaborators that you need for your project to happen the way you have imagined it? Imagine an ideal scenario.
So fill it up next to that in the same row only.
C1, C2, C3. Yes, C1, C2, C3 are your collaborators. Again, be as specific as you can be. Okay, 1 more minute to go and then we close this exercise. So if you're filled up, you're filled up. You've not filled up, you've not filled up. And we take a screenshot of it and we'll discuss that. It's okay if you've not been able to think of something. So that's what I mean to say. It's not to punish somebody or something. It's just to say that, yes, you didn't have an answer to something, it's fine. Or you had only 2 answers, or you had only 1 answer, whichever. But 1 more minute and we close this exercise. Those who have already filled up, you could just look for a piece of paper from around you and a few pens or a pencil, whichever you prefer, to draw. So it's whatever you're comfortable to draw with. A blank piece of paper and mediums with which you're comfortable drawing. It doesn't have to be a beautiful drawing. That's not what we're looking for, but something that allows you to draw quickly.
Tanisha, maybe you are filling up in my row.
What do you want us to draw?
Maybe you fill
No,
up
I'll come
in
to
my
that.
row.
Wait. Who? Tanisha. Okay, Tanisha, you have to write horizontally. You're writing vertically, so it's going in Zanatun's. Huh. Okay.
So my first rows are missing now, so I need to fill up again.
Go ahead. I should have frozen this, maybe. Sorry, I didn't know. I forgot that you all are not able to see it. Okay, so now when you're scrolling, you all will be able to see C1, C2, C3, and U1, U2, U3. Okay, so we stop this exercise. Everybody can move to the next one. It'll be nicer if you get to do that for 15 minutes. Just going to stop sharing. Okay, so what we need to draw? We need to draw your journey map of your project, you and your project, right? What is important and what is voluntary? What is important is to know the duration and your goalposts. What do you want to achieve in 6 months? What do you want to achieve in a year? How long do you want to do this project? It's okay if you want to do this for 5, 7, 8 years. There's no shame in that. So please don't worry. This is not that kind of a research question where you're like, oh, acha, isko itne saal lagenge. No. But the reason you're taking longer is why? Because you might have more goalposts. So what are these goalposts? These are 2 important things. 2 voluntary things which you can map in your journey map is going to be who all are joining you, where are they joining you, users, collaborators, institutions, what all is happening in those goalposts. Activities or collaborators or people that you want to involve. Your drawing needs to have a journey map with time and with goalposts. Voluntarily, you can also add activities, you can also add people or probable people from the thoughts that you had while filling up the Excel sheet. And I'm going to share a link to the drive where we will quickly take a photograph with your mobile and upload. So not something polished that we're looking for. You can also put in challenges in the roadmap. You can also put in aspirations. Aspirations is your goalposts. We'll take 15 minutes to draw this, which is 1:05. close the computer, close your eyes, just visualize your journey and draw it out. A quick photograph from the phone, nothing too fancy, and just your name on the file. Okay, so while everybody is uploading, better be uploading. Just stop drawing whatever you've drawn. It's completely okay. I think it's time to share and reflect. So the exercise was not to get into goods and bads or are you right or wrong. It was only for all of us to see together what our minds have thought in the last 1.5 days. So I'm just going to share on the screen, and anyone who feels like sharing or reflecting or saying what happened to them while they were doing the exercise, please take the handle and one after the other share. So I'm just going to first go to the Excel sheet so we all can see. So here's what most of us have added, right? It might be a good time to see. Sorry?
I'll go clean up my order of things. Sorry. They're all pasted.
I did organize it. While you were doing that, I did organize it.
Thank you.
So that it's easier for you to pick and read, right? So, okay, I'm just going to keep it scroll down and then I'll go back up. Any thoughts, any questions that came to anybody's minds? Anybody felt clearer while doing the exercise? Challenged?
Ishita, sorry, I mailed it to you because the upload was not successful.
Okay, I'll add it to the drive.
Very sorry.
It's okay. I'll add it to the drive.
Thank you.
Can I share first? Because I need to go in a bit. So
yeah, so we are not really discussing. So nobody is, I'm not going one by one over here. Okay. But yes, you can share your thought. Yes, please. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
So I have had a considerable amount of change from like in the last, since yesterday. Because I was thinking about what really adds value and is it so much a personal archiving or is there anything else that we can do? I have a book to do with the tarot cards and there's a lot of documentation that's available on the way the cards have been visualized over centuries and how they've been used and what purpose they've been used for. But often when I look for equivalents of Indian astrology, as per my knowledge, there isn't a lot of that documentation that is there. So my new brief, which I am 100% sure of now, is the visual history of Vedic astrology. I've divided it up into kind of 4 parts. So that's why my users have kind of like changed considerably from yesterday. I'm looking at more like working with direct histories in museums. So I have like 4 phases. One is like the Indus civilization and a lot of symbols of gods and deities and symbols of like universe that people would have used, which is excellent because Lothal is so convenient for me. And there's kind of, I've been there before and seen a lot of those kind of like things. And I'm lucky to have the Indology Museum right here in Ahmedabad, which also has, I think, some good amount of documentation on that. So I think the first phase of it really would be the Indus civilization to the Vedic periods, because the way even something as simple as how the charts are drawn change a lot. And then how you go from like the Vedic periods to, let's say, like when there's a lot of like Buddhist and Jain influence that comes up, and they have a whole way of like doing cosmological charts that they have. And then the third would be, kind of going from the civilizations to the modern time and how the way the symbols of astrology have changed over a period of time. Like if I was to talk about today, it's honestly quite boring compared to the visuals before, because we draw up charts on softwares right now. So no one is hand drawing charts anymore. The symbols are symbols that are available on computers. So asterisks, commas, so like if you want to, for example, indicate that a planet while you were born was in retrograde, it's just an asterisk. It's such a small, like, but has such a big influence in your life, that kind of. So that's basically, I think that is what I'm now looking at. But I think for this period, I'm just going to focus on phase one, which is the kind of Indus civilization, one of the oldest civilizations, which I'm sure like has a lot of ways of how do you derive like the signs of the universe for the common people, looking at those kind of like symbols and what the meanings they have, and taking it up to, if I can, up to the Vedic periods and what are the symbols that were used associated with astrology up till that period. So yeah, just wanted to give that update.
Fascinating. And I think the question, the key question that you sort of addressed, I think, in the workshop is what is the value building of the project?
Yeah. I think this certainly, I think, adds more value. I don't have like a big vision for this, at least as of now. But I think this is for anyone who was to read it, even if it was for myself. I think it adds far more value than what I was trying to do through a more personal archive, which was really just, pleasing myself, I guess. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any thoughts while you were doing this exercise?
Is it okay if I drop off? I need to jump onto some classes next. So
sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
All.
Ashita, I think the only thing I'm going to ask towards the end is if Saturday, Sunday works, or at least with this bunch, I want to make sure that the other workshops are more closely curated. October 1 is going to be a weekend because we're also trying to do it hybrid in Bangalore. But maybe for the November, December, it'll be good to know if Saturday, Sunday works. I was also thinking that if yesterday got too much, could we do Friday evening, Saturday morning, Sunday morning, so that we have smaller sessions? Or does Wednesday, Thursday work? So just let me know even later, even if not now.
Sure. I mean, weekends are good. I think what we had, personally for me, it works. Friday is a little difficult because I have classes Friday, Saturday, Sunday afternoon, Friday evening. So this was, for me, worked out quite well because I was able to like do both.
Balance.
So, yeah, but that's personal. So yeah. Anyway.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Hi. Ishita, could I go next?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Can you just scroll up to my name, please?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was thinking in terms of users, it could be families and particularly younger generations, because my intent is to connect generations and, instill the sense of identity. The next would be like researchers or historians, because there would be a lot of history, so it could be interesting. Also primary data there. Also, the third user could be anyone from the public, because I want to generate interest in this subject. So if people are interested, they could even contact me because I want to make this a practice at some point. Communities and schools in terms of collaborators. For schools, I'm wondering if there's some sort of benefit. In fact, I've already started working on this with my father, of understanding history through lived histories, through a lived histories project. And I'm finding already like it is changing perceptions of how students perceive history, rather than it being from a textbook, to actually have someone like narrate a personal experience around a particular historical event. I think this has already started generating a lot of interest. Next could be collaborators, could be like children and their families, which is something I'm already doing. There was a little book I brought out for art in transit when Arzu, Amitav and all were working with the metro station. And so it contained my mother's memories of Bangalore from her childhood. Next, I'm thinking of, museums and existing archives could be possible collaborations also.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I think one of the biggest suggestions is going to be think more on this. Most of us need to. as much as we want to do it for the larger masses, even I started off with that intention years ago. I'm only learning now, and that's why I'm sharing it with you all. It helps to have more targeted users in mind, consumers in mind. It helps to have targeted consumers. It helps to have very specific kind of collaborators in mind. And then while we are exercising with them, as I was giving an example, that when you're working with your web developer, you basically figure out how does the design or how does the translation or how does the access form in the legal case, how does it attend to the larger audience. So your output attends to the larger audience, but your relationship which you are manifesting through this project is more of a personal one, more of a direct one, or a specific one. Okay. In the meanwhile, Namita and then Nijum and then Shweta. Go on.
So there's one thing that I realized when it comes to collaborators, people who are upcoming photographers and people who own studios in the current time and they don't hold an archive, they could very much be sensitized to the importance of having an archive, of building their own archives, as well as holding an archive of a fellow photographer, and how they could also preserve their own. So there was one thing that had come up, and when I was doing the mapping exercise, there was one thing that came up, that it also, apart from being considered as a public archive, it could also go back to being a family archive, family history, because the tradition of photography, if it exists in the family, it would be amongst the family of why it happened in the first place. So these are 2 points that came up to me when I was working on this.
I'm glad, because when you think like that is why it's becoming then more topical or more personal and more doable, is how I'm going to put it. So when you're thinking for the photographers, and if it can happen, the exhibition can happen in their place, or they want to celebrate this work. Of course, as I said, we were doing this exercise in an ideal scenario. Now to find that funding and to find that resource or an organization who believes in that cause and all of that will be another ball game altogether. But at least it's making the practice doable. So last case scenario, could think of alternative or innovative ways to at least fund it also, kind of a thing. The moment you think, okay, it has to be an exhibition in museum, in, let's say, Documenta 15, that's when it is getting very far-fetched. You want the global world to see it. Yes, that should also happen. Definitely should happen. But could it help to first contain your users?
Yeah.
Nijum?
Okay, I lost my internet connection for some times, so maybe I missed the late for this exercise now. But I forget to input there the money resources if I execute my archival project. So I think I can add this in the roles, and maybe I have another lack of the vision of what is the final execution should be and how I can execute it. So I think that's why I cannot be mature enough for the exercise. But I uploaded the map. Maybe we will do work on it in next session. So after the map exercise, I think I can see something in my vision. So I think, Ishita, you can understand my lackings and why I'm so much confused on the basin here. And if can we get the access of these meeting records after these sessions in 2 days?
Yes.
Okay, so my eye condition is not good, so sometimes I need to close my eyes. I cannot look at the screen, so that's why I need the recordings at least for these 2 sessions.
Definitely, yes. And again, hats off to you for attending it with an eye problem. Even without an eye problem, I know I'm feeling very overwhelmed with the computer screen over 1.5 days. So your commitment is unmatchable, and we will make. So, okay, there are two things that will happen to the recording. I know I'm digressing right now. Nijam, just mute yourself because there's an echo from your end. So there are two things which will happen. The raw cut recordings, I will put them into the drive in the right place, and everybody will be able to view, listen to it. And whatever needs to be edited, polished is what will go on YouTube. So these are two different things. The raw material, so that you can fall back onto it for the rest of the month to the discussions, things we said, we discussed, and you want to just skim through the recording like a film that you, oh, what did they say? What did they talk about? You will have these recordings raw in the drive by tomorrow, and you all can work with it over the month. And then the polished version, which needs to be made accessible to the public, will go on YouTube eventually when we're able to sit and edit it out, and I have more hands on deck in 15-20 days. So that will be the plan. So don't worry about the recordings and access to it. You are all a part of this material, so you have to have access to it, is how I look at it. Okay, Shweta? Actually, sorry. So Nijam, to answer your point, you have still done, even though you think you're confused, you have done the exercise quite rightly, to be very honest. In fact, in your case, when you said artist community, in fact, if you said Bangladesh artist community or women of Bangladesh or women artist community, would have made it very specific, would have been perfect. So don't worry about that. And I think I'm very curious how you have identified exhibition designer or a digital material support, so you already are thinking of a certain kind of an output, which is again very fascinating. So you have done it quite right. But if you all are feeling lost or confused, is where we all are in the projects when we start off. So that is why some of these exercises, we'll also keep doing them over the months to see how we refine them or don't, right? So the way Harshada said, for her, it got refined in a day or day and a half. For some of us, it might get refined in 2 weeks from now. For some of us, it might keep figuring itself out, Yes, Nijam, you can say something, please. Yes.
Okay, and based on our last day conversation, I think I should work on there is two versions actually. The audio version, the audio interview, and text developed in 2019 of Lipi's journey. And this should be published in Bangladesh Shilpakala Academy, but this work is still hand. So I think based on our last day discussion, I will work on the text, and then I will work on the audio, and then I will go to Lipi and give the permission for her, the image permission from directly to her, not the Samdani presentation. And all these things should take 1 month at least, because she is not in Bangladesh now. And when she will back, I will discuss with her. I will discuss with my mapping and everything. And then I take the formal decision, formal permission, and then I will come back to you in October session. So I think this is my way. And yes, I also add this in my map.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
You have your plan in place. And this is what I've written in the intro email also. Everybody's journeys are going to be very different. And yes, you will have to call your shots, where you get your clearances, where you get your acceptances, what you can access, how much time it will take, so on and so forth. Yeah. Perfect. Shweta?
Yeah, I mean, I have put some things down, but honestly, at this point, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, to be honest. I feel there's like a lot to be done, but I'm not able to look at the next step. Like, I don't know what is the first next step for me. Is it collaboration? Is it, starting my research in a specific area? If you see the map that I've done, I don't know whether you received it finally. I was able to send it through.
Email? Okay.
Yeah, I think I mailed it.
I'm moving to maps, yeah. Let me just do that. Any which ways, this is a good way to move. I'll add it to the drive later. I'll just right now move.
So, I mean, I realized that there are 3 distinct ways in which I want to archive the whole thing. And it's about connecting the 3 zones. And also, I mean, I personally think it's not going to be possible alone, but I also don't know how to kind of, as I said, what's the next step?
where do I start, even if I have to widen out? And a big question that came to my mind while I was drawing it is, do I want to do this or ditch it? And sometimes I don't know. It's really a question that it's coming to me because yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work, and monetization is a big thing, though I've put it in one corner over there. I know that monetization is a constant struggle for the project. So yeah, that remains like the crux of the problem for me in this situation, to kind of think about my next step. I mean, it's a question that's bothering me, because there is a lot of like research which I have to do on my own. I can do at my own time. I can pace it in a way that, it can go on for the next 15 years. But will I have the enthusiasm to pull it off for another 15 years at this level? And if I have to look at, how do I financially kind of make it, that's the question that keeps going in a loop for me, I think I kind of reached a slump at the end of the workshop.
It's okay. And I think one of the important things for most of us will be to keep in mind what we can achieve from these 6 months, because you're bringing it, I think it's a very good time to address. We can imagine that most of you could be able to do a prototype, and a prototype is definitely a very promising tool for funding. So instead of thinking of the whole project as self-investment, you can think of course, if you were doing a research project, you would have written proposal and you would have done literature survey and so on and so forth. Most of you are into academics, you'll understand. In that same comparable situation, when it comes to project making or project building, I have seen value in prototype building. So if you have a prototype, it leads you to more collaborators. It will lead you to thus more funding. It can allow you at least a foot inside the door to talk to a few people. So we can all imagine that once you have these prototypes, because it's too early at this stage to talk about what kind of funders or funding that you can avail of. But once we can see your prototypes, because your prototypes will show us whom it might be relevant to, or who are these doors that you're trying to knock. So in the 6 months, you are investing. Yes, right now you are investing from your own pocket, definitely, time and money. We can imagine that towards the end, we have a longer proposal in place, along with the prototype or the output that you create, or a semi-doc, that semi-mode that you create. Along with it, you actually have a budget sheet in place that if really this has to happen, these are the people I need, this much I need to pay, this much I need to get, this much time it will take. So these rough cut exercises can actually become a full-fledged document, which again, we all can discuss. I can give my feedback, you can refine it. You will be in a stage, you can be in a stage if you want, to take it to people who would want to invest into this. And I'm using the word invest very consciously, because I think I've come to a point to accept that we cannot only rely on grants, which are so few in the country. So we will need people who want to put in money, whether it's in the form of philanthropy, whether it's in the form of, I don't know if some of your projects are capable of becoming a startup. I don't mind imagining that also, or a certain kind of an IT powerhouse who wants to be associated with cultural projects. Some of them who might actually take your idea and tell you, okay, do it for this place because I come from this place. So you might first do it for that place because it gives you that grounding. And then you might take that balanced money and go and do Baroda because you are interested in Baroda. So these are these ways which are possible if it gives you, but also others, certain hope to think of why we are engaging in this exercise, because it can lead us to certain tangible outputs, which can lead us to more forms of lives and journeys ahead. Definitely. At least that's what I've seen happen with some of our projects and for other friends or our previous CPA people as well. So Mehwish is a very good example, right? Mehwish had been doing things in her own space for 5 years. And I completely, I'm very conscious when I'm taking credit, but it's because she has shared it with us that when Curating for Culture happened, one of the possibilities is where Harvard saw it being seen within the network or within the people itself, right? So Curating for, Constructing Personal Archives 2020 happening, doing a digital finale, even if you want. But for that, the push that she got in terms of wanting to do it, we definitely had so many audiences from Pakistan and India who associated with that project. So she could use those to fuel herself. Whether she wrote about them and those responses, I'm not very sure. But then you have a Harvard exhibition happening just in a year. So 2021 February we had our finale, and 2021 September or October she was in Harvard. So you can actually see that. And again, there are many examples. Patni Archives, which you know of. We also know of, again, as I talked about Deepti's archive, where it went into an institution, her father-in-law's. I know Soumya, who built her project into something else. Rukmini, who is now going to do a PhD based on the project that she did with us. She's hopeful that one of the US universities is going to go through. So there are possibilities that the self-investment which you might plan for. But only thing is, yes, you will have to do it with that conviction that something comes out of it. And by the 6 months, you have a prototype or a proposal that you can use.
Yeah. Okay. So
other questions? Sorry?
Yeah. So no. If we are short of time, so I won't. But I mean, I just in terms of the collaborators and the audience, did you just take a look at those and anything you want to comment on that?
So I'm just holding on to these exercises so all of us get time to ponder over it, because I know they were not supposed to be 1 minute answers. It was only to get it out of our systems.
Sure.
So I will send out an email in some sort of a larger response, what you all could think of. Maybe do a few iterations of this while you were preparing for October. And I will also tell you what to prepare for October. So in that process, these 2 questions will get refined, is my sense, in the way we have seen this project's approach. And if I have any specific thoughts, I will write to you in your boxes and comment on it.
Sure. Thank you.
And anyone else? Now we can move to the journey maps. So I'm just opening them. I'm going to just flow over them from one to the other like a film strip. Anyone wants me to pause and tell what you were thinking or how you feel about it, please go ahead. I'm just going to silently hover. Fantastic. How are we all feeling? Any last thoughts, questions, comments, reactions when you saw each other's maps or responses? Kaustubh drew a tree. I like that.
I think it's a family tree also.
Yes, yes. I think that's where it was inspired from, no? Family tree. Mary, how do you feel about having attempted at least the last exercise?
In fact, I filled in the Excel as well, but it's not showing up.
Oh, okay.
My tab. In fact, I filled in my tab, but it wasn't there in the display that.
Yeah, it's still not showing.
Did you refresh it anytime shortly?
Let's try again.
Yeah. No, I don't want to take anybody's time.
No, it's okay. I'm seeing it for myself. You can just tell us what you were thinking.
Yeah. As I told you right in the beginning, I am still the baby on board. But I got to learn a lot. As of now, I see some direction. No, there's light at the end of the tunnel now. So I know where to go now, what to do next. Hopefully by October, I'll be a much more informed researcher. What I am right now. I would like some guidebook, like, where I get to learn some basics of archiving, in case if you have any links or something.
So what I'm going to do is, one of the links which I will want to share is a presentation that I had made in detail about, let's say, putting together SEPTA archive. Okay. And of course, one other presentation, I'll have to just check if it's public. But 2 or 3 of these where somebody who has set up an archive is talking about the steps that you go through in terms of thinking of materials, conservation, preservation. I know a lot of this might not apply to many of your projects because we are going from these institutional to much more personal nuclear spaces. But I will just tell you things that you want to keep in mind in terms of thinking of your project. So yes, I will share those introductory presentations for you all to refer to.
Thank you. Books also will help. Okay. At least the titles.
Sure. Yeah. Now, some PDFs also exist with me. I'm very pro free download. So that's, so I'll share those as well.
Thank you.
It's just that I've got used to sending a lot more video material because people don't want to read. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.